everybody, I have my storytelling pipe out, and we're going to continue the saga of Sea Frog. We're going to pick up where we left off in Beaufort. As we were sitting in Beaufort enjoying the town, the storms were approaching because it was hurricane season. It was August, and there was one that looked like it was heading our way, and we've gone back through the logs, Hannah and I, and tried to research this a little bit, and we think that it was Hurricane Debbie. And interestingly enough, sitting here, we've just had Hurricane Debbie pass us and hit the U.S. coast 25 years later. Fancy that. But anyway, so we decided that we were going to get out of its way. And of course, when a hurricane's coming, it's not just the hurricane itself, but there's all the thunderstorms that get wrapped around the huge weather pattern. And I left off with one of the storms that we had gone through there in Beaufort. And we decided that it was time to go. So we headed up the Intercoastal. And I'm not going to tell you all the nice places to stop on the Intercoastal or every place that we threw an anchor out, but we headed up the Intercoastal. And all I had was markers, right? Remember, I don't have bottom charts or anything. And so probably within about the first 24 hours, we ran aground pretty hard on a sandbar. We were sitting there pretty stuck and we didn't know quite what to do. And remember, our engine's not running right either. So I've just replaced the prop, but the engine still does not generate a whole lot of power, not as much as I thought. And now that we're motoring up the ICW, I'm really noticing that it's not got very much power. But anyway, we can't get off of this sandbar, and I start trying to back up, and that wasn't a good idea because even with a full skeg rudder, if the rudder's protected on the front side and you back up, you're going to bend the rudder. So I had just rebuilt this rudder, and I started to back up, and I felt the rudder catch, and I felt the wheel turn in my hand. I'm like, oh no, we can't do this. I got this boat on the radio. I talked to this motorboat that I saw coming, just tearing up the ICW, and I got him on the radio, and I had him give me a wake. And so he went by real fast through a big wake, and I gunned the engine, and I get stuck again. And then he'd come, or he looped around, and he did this 2 or 3 times for us, and we got off the sandbar. If you haven't run aground in the ICW, you're either lying or you've never been on the ICW. You're going to run aground somewhere, especially not with the best charts. Now they have things now called Bob tracks, and if you follow his track, you're probably guaranteed to make it. But otherwise, there's places that you have to go through at high tide. You go through at low tide, and it's not good. So we kept working up our way up the ICW, and we're trying to run away from the storms, and we're trying to run away from this hurricane that's on its way. And once again, just like the first story I told about getting knocked down, you can't run away from a storm at 7 miles an hour. It just doesn't work. But we were trying, and we got to this one area where everything widened out quite a bit, and we threw out the anchor, and it was at night. We were tired, and sure enough, one of the storms came through that night. And just like in Beaufort, I'm dragging the anchor. We're getting closer and closer to land. I wake up, and we're just almost up on the beach. We're almost run aground. And so I'm running the engine in the middle of the storm, trying to keep the boat from running aground. So same thing again. I guess I hadn't learned my lesson. When you're going up the ICW nowadays, it's everything marked. There's books that tell you all the anchorages, where to go. You can plan your trip really well. The markers are much better. And one of the things that we try to do now is we want to make sure that we're in our anchorage by 3 o'clock. So we want to get up the first thing, at first light, we're underway before everybody else, and we're throwing anchor before everybody else. Because you don't want to be the last one into a crowded anchorage, right? But back then, it didn't seem that Hannah and I cared. We would go until, after dark, and then throw the anchor out wherever we pleased, and stay the night and do it again. So we actually made pretty good time.
On the 17th, we went through the locks on the Elizabeth River, and we anchored in Norfolk at Hospital Point the evening of the 17th.
Didn't stay for long.
Why would we do that?
No. By the 18th, we went all the way through Norfolk, and we were at Hampton Roads on the other side of the Chesapeake. And we stopped at Hampton Roads. We got to see Theodore Tugboat. And
yes.
that was kind of fun. So I had Samantha on my shoulders, and Sam was walking, and we got to see Theodore Tugboat. They had a great deal of fun with Theodore Tugboat. We also...
That's an old kids show, by the way, if you're not sure who Theodore Tugboat is. It was an actual tugboat as well.
Now, we didn't know where to get food. We didn't know where to go to shore. We had no research that we'd done. We just sort of sailed along until we saw a place where we thought we could anchor, and found a dock that we thought we could get the boat up to, and that's what we did.
Yep.
So we got to Hampton Roads, and we didn't have much food left, and so we went looking for a grocery store. But we didn't know where we were going, so we just started walking. With 2 babies in the stroller, we started walking. And like 2 or 3 miles later, maybe an hour, maybe 2, we found this little tiny grocery store.
Well, we would ask people on shore. So
Sure.
sometimes we would go to shore and say, well, where's their grocery store? Or we'd ask another boater or something.
But there wasn't anything near where we landed.
Yeah.
So we got to this little grocery store, and they didn't have anything that we recognized. I mean, there were no brands like Del Monte that you would expect, or Campbell's or anything like that. And so we had several cans, all that we could carry on the stroller. And so that's like, what, maybe 2 bags of groceries?
Oh, that stroller could carry a lot.
Yeah.
We had an old umbrella stroller that we used. And you could, if there was a kid sitting in it, you could actually put bags on either side, on either handle. And if there wasn't a kid put it in it, you could put a bag in where the kid would sit as well. That stroller was so useful, not only carrying children and carrying stuff in, because we had none of those little carts. We didn't have any of those little carts like we have today, one of those sort of garden type carts where you can pull along your groceries and whatnot. We just had an umbrella stroller and a sling.
So we stayed one night in Hampton Roads, and then we started heading up the Chesapeake. And we didn't really know where we were going. We didn't have a goal in mind as a particular town or anything like that. We just know we wanted to get away from the storms and the hurricane that was coming. And the storms and small craft advisory.
That we wanted to go to the boat show.
Yeah, well, we did know we wanted to go to the boat show. That was part of the plan. So we were going to get as far north as we could up towards Annapolis. And like I said, we were running away from the storms, and there was a hurricane coming. Probably the same ones that gave us the small craft advisory was leading thunderstorms before the hurricane got there.
Yep, that was so September 18th, we were at Hampton Roads. And we went to the grocery store. And
yeah, it says Chesapeake Bay. It was good sailing for several hours, but then it started raining. And we took down the sails and motored all night through 25-knot winds and rain and 3 to 4 foot waves.
So we left Monday afternoon. Monday, September 18th, we left, running before the remnants of a hurricane, it says here, which is not, by the way, a good idea. If you want to do this and you want to be a cruiser and you want to be a sailor, find a safe place to tie up well before a hurricane and let the hurricane be completely done before you leave again. And
by the 20th,
we were already in
Solomon's.
Yep.
I remember going up the Chesapeake at night, though, in that storm. And, of course, it's a shipping channel. So there were big, big boats. I'd never encountered this before. And so I didn't know the rules of the road very well. And I didn't know what, different bells were or anything like that. I barely knew, green and red lights. And so there'd be these massive ships, and pretty soon they'd hail us on the radio.
They are fast too.
Yeah, they're fast.
They look really far away until you look away for a couple minutes and they're right on you.
As we started getting close to Norfolk, we did not take the Dismal Swamp, by the way. We took that on our way south later on. One of the goals that we were doing, no, how do I say that? One of the reasons that we were going to the Chesapeake in the first place was because we were on our way to Ireland. We really wanted to go transatlantic. And we kind of wanted Melody to be born in Ireland. And so that was really the reason we were heading north, but we used the opportunity to get away from the storm at the same time. So I was a little upset that the engine wasn't running right. And we pull into Norfolk and we're running a little low on food. We weren't stocked up as good as we wanted to be because we left Beaufort in a hurry because of the storm. And we found ourselves in this big city and everything was available. It was kind of marvelous.
Within a very short distance, there was a really nice grocery store. And we had gotten used to just shopping at wherever and whatever was available. Because when you're on foot, you can't really be picky. And when somebody is willing to drive you, you don't want to say, well, I don't want to shop there. So, but this was a great grocery store. And also right by that grocery store was a laundromat. So we could go and do laundry and go grocery shopping and get off of the boat. And it was a short, safe little ride. It was a really nice place to be set up at.
And that's where we really started meeting people.
Yes.
We started visiting with other boaters, and this was then also the time that I got to use my diving certificate for the first time. We had gotten the diving gear like, oh, I don't know, nearly 6 months before. We didn't even have a boat yet. And there was this ad that came up in the classifieds for a full, set of tanks and fins and snorkels and everything. And I said, this looks like a really good deal. I think we should just get this. Don't know what I'm going to use it for. And so... Hey,
we still do that today.
Yeah, we still do that kind of thing. Oh, look at this. We'll probably use that someday. Let's buy it. Anyway, so the couple we met there, and I unfortunately don't remember their names or the name of their boat.
They were really, really lovely people. And of course, being so young myself, I now realize that they were younger than I am now. They had to have been younger than I am now. But yes, but at the time,
we thought they were old.
They were just... So if it's you watching this, we are very, very, very sorry. And please reach out because we'd love to talk to you again.
She knitted hats and gloves and scarves and all kinds of things. And she was kind of like Sally Sailor. She seemed like she could fix everything. Mm-hmm. And they had a boat that had a wooden centerboard, and their centerboard had gotten stuck down because the pin that holds the cable on the centerboard had fallen off. So they wanted to know if I could go down and fix it, and so I did. And they didn't have the pin, so I spent nearly a full tank of air looking for the pin in the muck under their boat. And you know what the crazy thing is? I actually found it. I found one bolt sitting down there in the muck. I didn't have a nut for it, but I found the bolt. And so I came back up and I said, I found your bolt. And then they said, well, can you put it on for us? I'm looking at my tank going, I wonder if I have enough air to do this. But sure enough, I had enough air and I went down there and I got it hooked up so that their centerboard would work. They were very thankful, and I was very pleased that I actually got to use my diving certificate and my gear for the first time. So that was kind of fun. And
she knit 3 hats for the kids.
One wasn't born yet.
Because it was getting cold. Oh, maybe was it only 2? Maybe it was 2.
No, she knitted 3.
Was it 3? Okay, yeah.
Okay. She knitted 3 because she knew you were 9 months pregnant.
Yeah.
And we were making.
And I think it was overnight.
Yeah, she did it so fast. So we were planning on going to the boat show up in Annapolis, like we said. And unfortunately, we never got to go to the boat show. And the reason why was because Melody was born.
Yep.
And she was almost born on the boat. Hannah had been in labor for, I don't know.
We don't need to tell this part right now.
Yeah, we need to tell this part.
No, we don't need to tell this part
Yes,
right
we need
now.
to tell
No,
this part.
not Stephen.
Anyway, after like 12 or 14 hours of labor,
Thank you for listening to me.
Melody didn't want to come out. She was stuck somehow.
So I went to the hospital and she was born and everything was fine. End of story. And she's lovely now. Thank you.
No, it's not end of story. So I tried to call up 911 to get an ambulance. And
Okay, that part's good.
yeah, and I told them, I said, hey, we're at Solomon's Island and we need an ambulance because my wife
Actually,
is
first
pregnant.
I called and
Yep.
then you took the phone from me. But
That's
luckily
true.
we had a phone.
We did have
Now
a cell
that
phone.
I think about it, we might not have even had a cell phone.
No, we had a cell phone.
I know, luckily.
Yeah, luckily. We had an old Nokia brick type of cell phone.
Yeah.
That we used. Anyway, so they said, well, what's your address? And I said, well, I don't have an address. I'm in the middle of the bay at anchor on a boat. Well, sir, we need an address before we can send an ambulance. And I said, well, I don't have an address. I can give you a grid coordinate. I can tell you what the latitude and longitude are. And that wasn't good enough. So after probably about 15 minutes of her looking at her maps and me describing the land and trying to figure out how many miles to this and how far from that, we finally came up with an address that seemed close. And so we got in the dinghy.
It was an apartment complex.
Yeah, it was an apartment complex
that had a dock,
nearby.
that had a small dock.
Yep. So we got Hannah over to the dock, and she got on the ambulance and went to Leonardtown,
Well,
where
they
Melody was born.
wanted me to walk to the ambulance.
Yeah.
And I was not going to. I got into the dinghy, I got out of the dinghy, and I was done. Thank you.
Yep, that was the end of it. So we made him bring a stretcher down the dock, and they didn't seem too pleased about that at the time either. But after she got to the hospital, everything was fine. Melody
Yes.
was born. She was beautiful.
Everything was fine.
And you came back to the boat when? The next day?
The next day.
Yeah. The very next day, she comes back with a newborn, and now Melody's on the boat, and we have 3. But this was just a few days before the Annapolis Boat Show, so
Yep.
there was no way that we were going with a baby that was 1 day old to the boat show.
But yet, spoiler, with a 15-day-old baby, apparently we can leave the area
Right.
and start heading south again. Because I guess 15 days is the magic number.
The next story will be about us turning around in the cold and heading back south again, this time with 3 babies instead of 2. Talk to you next time.
I'll tell you, part of that story's pretty dismal. By the way, if you like our content, the stories, our travels, please like, subscribe, and follow us on our socials for any updates. We release our videos weekly at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Oh wait, what was I going to say? There was something I was going to say. We fell in love with Solomon's Island.
Hello.
Hey
I
y'all.
said to bug you on my way by.
Okay.
See, I'll consider yourself.
Consider myself bugged.